Hey guys, my name's Stan. I'm 20, and once upon a time, I fell in love with a she-wolf. Some of you might make a bunch of comments about how this story is false. But are you so sure? It's a mysterious world. For example, did you know that scientists estimate that there is possibly 1 million lives undiscovered in the sea? And what if there's like a life form that doesn't want to be discovered? Anyway, that's what my professor, Dr. Morgan, was talking about at this campus orientation party. Well, I went to meet girls, but I ended up latching on to my professor like some super dork. I found it easier to talk to older folks than people my own age and was kinda shy by nature. On this particular night, I ran into this one guy in Dr. Morgan's class. His name was Clayton, and he tended to be a little pushy. He teased me about being in love with Dr. Morgan. She taught medieval literature, and we read some of the wildest stories I'd ever come across. They were filled with mythology and folklore. Clayton was pressuring me to help him on his paper, but the more he talked about it, I realized he wanted me to do his whole stinking thing. He got forceful. "It would be helpful if you just did it," he said. I reminded him about the honor code. Well, that just made him angry. "You know, there's a lot of bruisers around here that don't like you," he told me. And then he added that the only reason nobody had beaten me up was because he had my back. "But if you don't have mine, maybe you can face campus bullies on your own." I thought of myself more like a tutor or a study buddy than a cheater. But that night when I was working on Clayton's paper, I got distracted staring out my window. It was a full moon, and I was basking in its glow, when suddenly I heard something move outside the window. I opened it and poked my head out to get a better view, and I thought my eyes were playing tricks on me. Scampering across campus, I saw some kind of werewolf muscle girl. I thought I was just tired, or maybe somebody was goofing around in a costume or something like that. Later, I heard a long howl in the distance, and curiosity took me by the hand and guided me out into the night. I saw what looked like the she-wolf's shadow, and then I saw the figure drop down into this tunnel that led under a street to a forest. The beast snorted and ran. I could hear her feet crunching the grass and twigs as she tore out of there. I wasn't scared until I saw the creature resting. I didn't breathe at first, but then I snapped a picture with my phone. I startled her, and she barked loudly at me and snarled. I turned, backing away slowly. I didn't think about where I was going. I just took off. It wasn't long before I was completely lost. I tried to retrace my steps, but everything looked alike, and soon the sun was coming up, and I was going to miss class. I was tired and cold, and when I came upon this cavern in the woods, I decided to take a breather. My plan was to rest in the cave. It was hard to see, and when I stepped inside, I tripped over some kind of cloth. I turned on my phone flashlight to see what was going on. I saw old clothes that looked like they were a century old. Then there were some black and white pictures. I looked at the pictures, and I saw the most beautiful girl I'd ever seen. She looked like an old movie star. And then I saw an old notebook with study notes inside, except the dates on the notes seemed to be from 1947. But then I heard something behind me, and I spun around. It was a young woman, dressed in rags. Her hair was tangled. Her face was covered in dirt. She startled me. She looked scared. I asked her what she was doing here, but she didn't say one word. She just looked at me with fear. And when I moved closer, I realized she was the spitting image of the girl in the photo, except for the fact that she looked like she hadn't had a bath in ages. She seemed friendly, but wouldn't talk. Maybe she needed help, so I offered my shower to her. She understood me because she would nod when I pointed to her and the name Ruth on the notebook. In the light of the morning, I was able to find my way out of the forest, and Ruth followed me like a lost puppy. Once we got back to my dorm, I showed her the shower and went to the food court to get us both something to eat. On the way, I ran into Dr. Morgan, and she was asking me why I missed her class. I told her I was feeling ill. She reminded me about the midterm. I was so distracted, I didn't stay to chat and rushed back to the dorm with some breakfast burritos and a fresh pair of clothes. I tried to talk to Ruth, but she wouldn't say a word. She'd just smile at me and sometimes giggle. I told her I had to get her home, and she got a piece of paper and wrote, "I am home with you." And then later, she wrote that she went to this school long ago, and she wants to finish. I guess she started to like me, and I be lying if I didn't feel the same. We were able to communicate with gestures and the occasional written message. She told me she wanted to go with me to my classes. Most of my professors let her sit in, and she even completed assignments even though she wasn't being graded. Truth was, I liked being around her. One day after Dr. Morgan's class, Clayton followed us back to the dorm and threatened me again about the test. He was saying that if I didn't help him cheat, he was going to make me regret it. I guess this angered Ruth, because she started to growl and began to transform. Her teeth were sharpening into fangs. Her muscles grew like boulders on her body. She grabbed him and threw him up against the wall. She swiped at him with her claws, and I was worried she was going to destroy him. So I yelled at her to stop. She let him go, and Clayton ran off, screaming. He didn't mess with me again, and when we took Dr. Morgan's test, he was left on his own to cheat, which he did. She looked at me with her wolf eyes, and I was afraid. But once she calmed down, she transformed back into her human form. But she wasn't well. She was writing help in her notebook every day, but I didn't know how. I don't want to be a she-wolf any longer, she'd write to me. I thought maybe she was sick because she was sleeping a lot. I was wandering around campus, unsure of what to do about the werewolf mess. To be honest, I feared she might hurt me by accident, and I really didn't know what I was dealing with. I didn't know who else to talk to, so I found myself in Dr. Morgan's classroom. I brought the old black and white photos and the notebook from the 40s with me. When I showed her Ruth's notebook and photos, her face went white. "You found the girl. She's been missing for 70-something years." We went to the library, and Dr. Morgan showed me these archived articles about a student that went missing in 1947. Some people suspected she had gotten eaten by this strange wolf woman that had been spotted around campus. Most people cast it aside as some college town legend, but I knew deep in my bones that this was no myth. When I returned back to the dorm, I confronted Ruth. I showed her the old newspaper clippings. She seemed sick and hysterical, scratching herself like crazy. Before nightfall, she ran away. She wrote a strange number down on the clipping, and once again asked for help before she ran off. It was a full moon that night, and I heard her howling in the distance. I couldn't let her go, but it was still a mystery. I almost fell asleep scouring through her notebook looking for clues. But then suddenly, I recognized the number, or a part of it. It was a library code number, and I knew that Ruth wanted me to find a book. I went to the library, and I looked up the ISBN number that Ruth gave me. It led me to a book called Human-Animal Transformation. I looked through the book and found the chapter on lycanthropy and werewolves. Some pages were dog-eared, and I began to suspect that Ruth had this very curse placed on her. I read more and learned that the only way to break the curse was for someone who loved her to kiss her while she was in werewolf state, proving true love. There was a bond between us, and maybe it was love for a boy and a she-wolf. That night, I wandered back through the forest, following the howls. I found Ruth in her beast form, pacing outside her cave in distress. When she saw me, she began to growl and bark, and even though I was telling her I loved her, she seemed to be warning me to stay back. I was scared in love, but I couldn't turn back. "I'm going to kiss you," I said, and she barked louder. I moved in, touched her face gently, and kissed her. I broke the spell, and when Ruth was back in her human form, she threw her arms around me. "I can speak again. You broke the spell." There's this saying that's pretty right on in this case. A barking dog seldom bites. Sometimes people and animals can be scary, but if you prove that you can be trusted, they'll usually befriend you. Ruth returned to civilization and was able to move on from the centuries she spent as a wolf. And now, I have the most beautiful girlfriend on campus, and I made a friend for life. Have you ever found love in an unexpected place? Tell us about it in the comments. And don't forget to like and subscribe for more hidden wisdom stories. Remember, when you share our stories, you're sharing wisdom.